Welcome aboard, shipmates. This is Real Sailors, Real Sea Stories, a training program created for the United States Naval Sea Cadet Corps by our friends and supporters at the Navy Talent Acquisition Group in Philadelphia. I'm your host, Warrant Officer David Sheets of the Naval Sea Cadet Corps, and I am joined once again by our all-Navy support crew of MC1 Quinlan, who's our PAO, and STG1 Lewison, who's our Technical Support Director. Today's topic, what is it like to be an air traffic controller in the Navy? This is going to be cool. And our presenter is Petty Officer First Class Jamie Britt. She comes to us all the way from the Navy Talent Acquisition Group in New Orleans. So thank you for coming. Really appreciate it. We also have guests, so I've been told, from the Royal Canadian Air Cadets. So from our friends up north, thank you for joining today. Look forward to getting your questions as well as we move forward with this program. So cadets, either Sea Cadets or Air Cadets from Canada, this is an interactive presentation. So when you have questions, and I hope you do, put your questions in the comments section of this presentation, and I will do my best to get them read out as the presentation goes along. There is also an online quiz, and the link to the online quiz will be posted after the live stream is over. So cadets, if you want to get 2 hours of credit or to show that you participated in this event, fill out that online quiz, and it'll be active for a couple days. That being said, for our friends in Canada, the quiz is really built as far as information for the Naval Sea Cadet Corps, but you can do it too. So feel free to do it. Make sure that you have your correct email address and your commanding officer's email address, and they will definitely get notified if you're able to take the quiz, which I hope you do. So without any further delay, Petty Officer Britt, this ship is all yours.
Hi, sir. Thank you so much for having me. For Naval Sea Cadet Corps, thank you so much for having me. And hello up north to our Air Cadets in Canada. I'm so excited to be here and share my story and talk about being an air traffic controller in the Navy. And let's get started with the presentation. Next slide, MC1, please. Okay, first of all, I am from a very, very small town in Texas. I think you could probably call it a one-horse town, although maybe we have more than one horse, maybe 2 or 3. A nice blinking light, and that's about it. There's about 1,200 people, and so the Navy, joining the Navy out of such a small town was completely out of my realm of thinking when I joined 15 years ago.
So the question for you is, okay, so you're from such a small town, right, in Texas. What part of Texas is this? Is it like central or is it near the coast?
South of Houston, about an hour.
Okay. So was there any Navy influence there, or what made you think Navy?
Absolutely not. So the funny thing about it is that I guess we're such a small town that the Navy recruiters didn't really bother coming out that way. It's kind of a drive from the recruiting station, about 45 minutes or so. And the Army was there in full force all the time. So I didn't really get to see any Navy personnel. My uncle is a captain, a retired captain in the Navy. So I had that influence in my life. But he lived in Austin, so I didn't really know what the Navy was about or what it could offer. So moving into why I joined, I actually went to college. I went to Sam Houston State University and got my bachelor's degree in criminal justice. Now, the funny thing is when people tell you, oh, go to college, you need job experience to pair with that. So when I got done with my college degree, I needed job experience and nobody would hire me, and I was working in a antique store, and that I needed a stable job. I needed health care, and for my son, I had my son at the time, and so that's why I joined a little bit later in life.
Okay, a good choice, I assume.
Yes, sir. I mean, 15 years later, I say it was a good choice. It really launched me into some things that I'll kind of go into my different avenues I took with the Navy, because I believe that the Navy, because we're so diverse, everybody's experience is different. Every single one of us takes different paths in the Navy. And so our whole naval career, that's why I love the sea stories, because we all have different stories in the same Navy.
Very true.
The best thing about my job, I love the view from the tower. At night, it looks like Christmas with the runway lights and the taxiway lights lit up. So the runway lights are your amber yellow, or your white lights, and then you've got your taxiway lights that are blue, and everything is just kind of peaceful because if there's not a whole lot of traffic coming in, it's kind of quiet, and you can just look out over the view of the airfield and enjoy it. And just even during the daytime, you could see for miles and miles and miles out. So we do have the very best view, I think, in the Navy.
So I got a question for you that came in from the cadets, which is actually kind of funny. All right, so all the time since you're in the tower, right? Because you think of like that scene in Top Gun. Do you actually have people requesting doing flybys by the tower? Or is that just like Hollywood?
No, that's just Hollywood. I don't think they care too much about us being up there. They've got their own mission, and we're just the voice that comes in through their earpiece. So I don't know if they're like too worried about. I'm sure if we ticked them off, they might.
Okay.
They might fly by, but in emergencies. So if you see an aircraft that's approaching the tower, you know that something is wrong. And that's when they will come by, and they'll actually fly by the tower, and they'll rock their ailerons or rock their wings. So you know that they've lost communication, and that you need to use what we call a light gun. So there's green, red, and white, and we'll use that to communicate if it's safe to land, or if they need to keep going around, or whatever it may be. So that's whenever you see them close by, that usually means that something's wrong.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So that's very good.
Moving just through the introduction, riding in the back of the MV-22. So I'd like to know if any of the Sea Cadets out there know what an MV-22 is, and kind of how they fly. And then, so I have been stationed, and I'll just go through my history of assignments real quick. NAS Corpus Christi is a training facility. This is where our student pilots in the Navy and Marines and even some foreign nationals start out in Corpus Christi, Texas. And they start out on a single prop plane. They have, their secondary moves into the dual prop. And then they move on from secondary to either fly like P3s or jets. So that's kind of where this is a cradle. I know that Pensacola has coined themselves the cradle of aviation, and also Corpus Christi is another part of that. And then I went into the reserves because I wanted to finish my master's degree, which the Navy helped me pay for. And while in the reserves, I did as an air traffic controller. You can choose to go up to the tower for your 2 weeks time, or you can do some other rates job. So I've done work as a YN. I'm recruiting now. So you kind of have a lot of flexibility in the reserves for different jobs. Are
you still in the reserves at this point in time?
Yes, sir. I'm activated reserves on recruiting duty.
Oh, very nice. So back to the choice of being an air traffic controller. How did that come about?
Okay, so this is a funny story because I did not know what an air traffic controller was. With my limited knowledge of the Navy, I thought I was going to be waving the flags like a signalman. So in boot camp, when they gave us our book that you get in boot camp, I forgot what it's called. They had flag signals in the back of it.
Jackets manual, is that what you're talking about?
Not the blue jacket manual, the actual like manual that you go through, and you know each phase of boot camp you get to a user guide or something like that.
Oh, okay.
You carry it around everywhere, and there's signaling in the back. So every night I'd stay up late and I would practice these signals. And so when I arrived at my first duty station, or no, really A school, they were like, that's not what we do.
Oh, jeez.
I spent all that time practicing for nothing.
Well, you never know. It could always be handy. Could be a good skill one of these days.
Yes, sir. So if you want to go to the next slide, MC1, we'll kind of get into air traffic control as a whole. We perform duties, so we're FAA certified. When we go to the Navy A school, which is our technical training school, we actually get FAA certified. We get what's called a pink card there, and you can use that as a civilian to go control anywhere. And it's just basically you have to pass an airman written test. And if you pass that test, you're issued a pink card and you become a Navy AC. So that's why we're so similar to civilian air traffic controllers. And we can work in any tower or radar. Next slide. Oh, this is the video.
Air traffic controlling, it's a lot of multitasking.
Got to be that extra set of eyes and ears for the pilots. You come in, you never know what you're going to get. We organize and expedite the flow of traffic, making sure the planes don't touch.
I'm hoping to transition over to an aircraft carrier, which is very fast-paced from what I've heard.
And on a ship, you have last-minute turns, obviously, surface contacts or whatever may be happening in the ship. The runway moves. That's probably one of the more complex components.
If the weather's bad, then sometimes it does become a little more stressful.
You have someone checking in for an emergency, something could be seriously wrong with the aircraft.
So imagine flying through lightning, storms, hail.
And it's your responsibility to help them get to the ground safely.
Magnum 440, stand by this frequency, Mayport final. Navy 413, turn left, heading 050.
You're there to help the pilots. You're there to provide a service, make sure they're okay and everything goes smooth.
It's a fast-paced job, so stay focused, stay in the books.
The Navy provides excellent training for this job, so you get to learn radar, tower, you get to learn the whole thing.
We work with anything that's in the air. It doesn't matter if it's civil or military.
You have airport towers that need manning everywhere, so this is one of the best jobs in the Navy that transitions into the civilian world.
Okay.
So let's talk a little bit about A school. So A school for air traffic controllers is where? That's Pensacola, right?
That's Pensacola, Florida. Yes, sir. And it's about, I think the length is, if I remember correctly, 4 months time, however many weeks that is. And I was actually there a little bit longer because if you go to A school during the holidays, which I was there during Christmas time, they kind of shut down operations for a little bit, so people on holiday stand down. And so mine was just a little bit longer than most people.
Okay. So, there's a lot going on with air traffic control. I mean, just from my experience with that, and there's multiple phases and everything. How do they start to teach you how to do this?
So you start, first you start with weather, because actually weather is, so we start with the AG teaching us, which is a areographer's mate. They teach us, basic weather, reports. So when an aircraft is going to a certain destination, we can pull the weather and say, well, the temperature is, whatever it may be, the dew point, the altimeter setting, and if there's a ceiling of clouds, excuse me, if there's any rain or just basically anything. So we learn.
I think we may have lost you. Stand by, everybody. Let's go back. Are you back? Okay, great.
Am I still on?
Yeah, we lost you when you were just starting to talk about the weather briefings.
Oh, okay. So when they come out, they actually just come out in codes, so letters, and so we have to learn how to do that. Let's see. I'm getting a notification on my computer. of course, Murphy's Law, right? So we start out with weather, and then we move into the different parts of tower. So you may have seen in the tower pictures on the video or the one that I put up that you're not just up there by yourself. So you have someone that is reading clearances. You have someone that is working all of the planes on the ground. You have someone that's actually working all the planes in the air. And then you have like a supervisor that's overseeing everything. And so everyone has their job in the tower. And the same in the radar room. So I like this video because it shows both of the radar scopes that we use. And it starts off with that green kind of circular scope that is going kind of up and down. And
right.
It's V-shaped. And that shows us, the top shows us the, basically if the plane is too high or too low, we want to keep them on what we call a glide path. So we're talking them down saying above glide path or below glide path. And then the bottom section of that screen actually shows if they're left or right of course. So we may say, you're above glide path, right of course, turn left heading 129er. Okay. And that just means that they're too high and they're too far right of the course. And that's how we talk them down to all the way down to the deck, which of course is the runway.
So, so, I mean, that's really demanding. I'm trying to think like of some other rates we're talking about, but I would think like maybe the first time you attempted this, that you were starting to work on this, that there would be a certain level of nervousness, right? When you're actually doing it for real, right?
Yes, sir. So we start simulators.
What's that like? How do you get over that?
Well, okay, we start on simulators in A school, but then when you get to your first duty station, you realize, and we can go to the next slide because MC1 if you like, because I know it shows pictures of the radar screen. And when you begin to talk or you start learning this type of stuff, it's nerve-wracking because you realize, wow, I'm talking to a real life person up there, and if I make a mistake, that's astronomical. And so the very first time that I was training in radar, I began my training in radar, and they were like, talk, and I just froze. I was like, I'm afraid I'm going to make a mistake. And so getting over that hump was really difficult at first.
So what happened? Did that actually happen and someone had to take a mic from you? What?
No,
actually.
So we have overrides. So when you're training, you have your instructor plugged in, and you have your trainee plugged into the training block. So we have our headsets, and I think you can kind of see it in this picture because you see that sailor there with his headset in his ear and the microphone. So we're plugged into the comms section. And so when you're plugged into the instructor part, you can actually override your trainee. So if they start saying wrong instructions or your plane starts going too far right or left or whatever it may be, you can override and fix it. So once I found that out, that they could just override me, I wasn't as scared to make a mistake because I knew that they would be there to fix it.
Okay. So over time, though, the instructor's not there anymore, right?
Right. So once you become qualified, then you're free to ride solo, meaning that you have enough trust from the supervisor there to run your approach. You still have a supervisor in the back monitoring everything, but they have enough trust in you that you can run your approaches solo and run that position without incident. That's what we try to do all the time without incident. And you also have to run it in the safest, most expeditious way possible, because if you have a lot of aircraft check in at one time, you need to be able to prioritize those aircraft, whether they fly faster or they're closer to the entry of the runway, and prioritize them and sequence them in so that they can get to land the fastest route possible.
So how do you get proficient at that? To me, that seems like a very difficult task.
So we practice on simulators. We do have simulators, and we also just make run after run after run after run with the instructor. So it's not like, oh, okay, you did one and you did great. And no, we practice in the worst possible weather, where the pilot can't see anything. And I'm speaking on radar, but even in the tower, as you see up at the top of that screen, you're just constantly running through time after time after time until you see enough scenarios that they feel comfortable with you being on position. And especially, I spoke about working with the training pilots.
Right.
They're listening too. So you may tell them to turn right and give them a heading, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to do that. So
that's excellent. Yeah, right. Because they're learning as well as you are, right? So they're going to make mistakes, unlike, say, seasoned pilots who probably make less mistakes, right? But you're still there.
Yes, sir. And, I don't know if the statistic still holds true, but this is as I was coming up as an air traffic controller. They say in one shift, an air traffic controller is responsible for more lives than a surgeon is their entire career, because it's not just the pilot, but also their passengers that they have in that plane as well.
Right. So have you had a scenario, and this is, for cadets, I'm sure that they're interested in this, is, that you were giving commands for someone to do something and they just didn't do it? And
yes.
How do you make that a positive outcome? Because it could go really bad, clearly. So how do you fix that?
So, like I said, as we were training, we were learning the different. We could learn the pilots' voices, and if they sounded really, really nervous, because they also have an instructor in their back seat too. But if they sounded just really, really nervous, I knew that I couldn't speak fast, because as air traffic controllers, we speak very fast and clear. That's what we have 1 million airplanes in the sky, but every pilot, and I know you're a pilot, sir, so you'll appreciate this,
right,
thinks they're the only plane in the sky.
Oh, because I am. Okay, never mind. Okay, you are. Okay, and you have a very small window that you're communicating to all these people, so they better get on board.
So, right. So if I heard a nervous pilot or a nervous voice on the other end, I may slow down my speech, because if I didn't, they would ask to repeat it. And that's the worst, right? Because I just gave you all these control instructions and they say, Tower, can you say again? Oh man, I've got
You're killing me. Stop it. Right.
I have 4 other planes I need to talk to, but okay, here they are again. So I did have a case at one point when I was in Corpus Christi, when we would extend a pilot upwind. So as you're looking at a runway, if you were to take off and just go straight, that's called upwind. And then if you were to take like a turn and come back around like you're going to land, that's called a downwind. So sometimes we'd have to extend like the P3's upwind, because we had single prop planes in the pattern with them, and they are a lot slower. So we would extend them upwind and then let the prop plane to give proper spacing. And so I remember I extended someone upwind, but and I told him after I think it was 2 miles or so upwind, right downwind approved, and they just kept on going. They kept on going, and they're almost, by the time I came back to them, I'm like, oh my gosh, they're almost out of my airspace. So I had to actually turn them left, which was a different route, just to kind of skirt the airspace. So airspace, if you think of airspace, you think about this is my bubble. Mm-hmm. And on the other side of my bubble is someone else's airspace. So you don't want to pop into someone else's bubble because you don't know what they have going on over there. So you had to kind of skirt and keep them inside. or if they do for whatever reason pop over in someone else's bubble, you have to coordinate with that conjoining tower or approach facility. So
and if that happens, I'm sure they're not too thrilled.
no, they're not thrilled at all. But yeah, well, sometimes it just kind of depends on what they have going on. If their hair is on fire, they most certainly are not pleased with you. But it just kind of depends on what the situation is. So there's a lot of multitasking too. You're watching. I'm sorry, sir. Do you have a question?
Well, I was interested in, as far as, like, to your point, you just brought it up as far as multitasking. If you have multiple aircraft in the sky at the same time, and from the last example you just gave, where that aircraft is going upwind and you didn't get back to them, right? Because other things are happening. How do you determine who gets talked to first? Is it closest to the tower? How do you know that? Because it almost has to be instinctual.
I think, and they've been talking about making air traffic control all audio, automatic, or computerized.
Right.
And I think that the human factor, you cannot add that into computers, and that's where our training, our how we are developed as controllers, the way the Navy has trained us, that's where that comes in. The priorities would be, the person that's on short final, which final approach is when you're coming into land. And so there's short final, there's 5 miles out, 7 miles, there's different areas. So that priority would be to make sure that they check their wheels down, meaning put your wheels down and give them a wind and a clearance, and then go get the guy that's way upwind, so that's what, that's how you would know, is not necessarily the closest to the tower. Maybe the closest to the deck would be your priority, but we speak so fast that you could say all of that in, just a couple of seconds, which is one of the reasons why we speak a little bit faster, because we're firing off.
Understood. Okay, got it. Thank you.
And, I was going to say that we used to tell everyone, hey, if you can work a drive-through at McDonald's or Wendy's, you could probably be an air traffic controller, because while you're taking orders, you're taking money from the customer at the window, you're bagging up their, order, you're getting drinks for the next customer. So it's very similar to that.
Okay, I think you just minimized the whole vocation, but that's cool.
So, yeah, no, I mean, we're not Wendy's drive-through by any means, but it's, to put it in a perspective, that's what multitasking in a tower or radar room is like.
Okay. So also on this slide, I mean, I get the carrier air traffic control, which is something you and I talked about, which isn't, part of your experience, but what is amphibious air traffic control?
So amphibious air traffic control is like for your LHDs, your small boys, and that's going to primarily be helicopters. So I always joke about this, right? Because when you have planes in the sky and you have to, I don't know, go to the bathroom or something, you can't just be like, 99, hold your position, unless you're an amphibious air traffic controllers, because helos can just hover, right? So all the other planes keep flying, but helos, they can actually just hold their position where they are for the most part.
Okay.
So 99 means, like, I'm talking to everyone on the line. 99, attention here, and you could say anything after that. But hold your position on ground would be like if everyone's moving on ground and some emergency has happened. 99, hold your position, and they'll just stop right where they are. But okay. That's amphibious air traffic control, mostly dealing with helicopters or the MV-22s.
Okay. And one of our cadets did respond that the MV-22 was the tilt rotor aircraft. So yeah. They know what it is. So well done, cadet.
Awesome. So a lot of times when I'm doing this, when I'm talking about them, they'll say, oh, that's VTOL. And I'm like, okay, well, what does VTOL mean? It's a vertical takeoff, But as they get high enough to whatever altitude it may be, they'll tilt their rotors forward and they'll fly like a plane. So I guess with that, we can go into my little story about the MV-22. Okay, so I went to Djibouti, Africa. That was my last deployment. And I know, sir, you've been to Djibouti. It's changed a lot since you've been there.
Yeah, they have Wi-Fi, so that's awesome.
And Pizza Hut.
Pizza Hut. Okay.
Yes, sir. So the funny thing about it, when you went, it was a dirt strip. Now we have an actual landing strip, but we only have one. So it's still pretty small there. So we have one landing strip, and we needed to practice, because if that landing strip were to ever be compromised, or we weren't able to use it for whatever reason, it doesn't have to be the enemy has crept in and, gotten it. It could be just that there's a plane that broke down on the runway. Mm-hmm. We needed to practice building a runway. And so we had a Marine unit in, and they said, hey, would some of you air traffic controllers, you Navy guys, want to come out with us and practice this? And of course, I volunteered, because I was like, when in Rome, right? So we actually took off on an MV-22. And as we were flying over the coast of Djibouti, we were going to the desert to practice making this runway. And they let us actually sit on the edge of the MV-22. And I have to admit that that face right there is totally fake, because I'm scared out of my mind.
Okay.
I did not know I was afraid of heights until I unbuckled, and they put us in a gunner's belt, which goes, around your waist, and it hooks onto the plane. So that's the only thing keeping me from, like, essentially sliding out of there. Right. And I went to take the first step to walk, and my feet did not move. And the Marine's like, come on, other people want to go, hurry up. I'm like,
they care so much about you. Yeah.
I'm like fighting the biggest battle in my head right now, and you're like, hurry up, come on. So I'm not actually that close to the end either. I'm kind of far back, and I'm holding on to the plane and then I'm like, hurry, take the picture. Okay, I'm done. So anyway.
Okay, so you're flying out on a V-22. You're hanging out the back, right?
Yes, sir.
So let me bring you back to the beginning of this presentation. All right. So you're from a small town in Texas.
Yeah.
Could you like imagine being in a small town in Texas? Next thing you know, you're in the Horn of Africa, hanging out the back of a V-22, flying like over the desert.
No, and I think I posted this on my Facebook, this picture, and I was like, so there I was hanging out the back of an MV-22 in Africa, and my dad always jokes. He said, man, you come back from these deployments with all these stories, and then you just like go to the same old, we have a little hamburger place, and you just go sit back like it's, no big deal, just back in my small town.
Hey, you're the same person, right? So that's great.
Same person, but been all over the world and had these amazing experiences. So that's kind of a cool, and you just kind of hold that inside, and you're like, man, if you only knew where I just came from,
Well, sometimes it's hard to explain it too to other people.
Yes, sir.
They don't necessarily get it. Those with that background, they're like, okay, yeah, and they act really cool about it, right? But when you tell your family, they don't really understand sometimes, which is okay.
Right. It's hard. It's hard to, I guess, to put it all into words, because that one picture is, like they say, is worth 1,000 words. I mean, I could tell you how I was feeling. I could tell you how the Marine was like, hurry up. I could tell you about the guy sitting next to me whose feet they're off of the edge. And I'm like, what's wrong with you? Scoot back,
Okay.
it's just, one picture is just worth so many words, and there's so much that goes into that when we look at it. And when we tell our sea stories and you see this picture of someone, overseas, it's like, man, if only I could just express how that moment is. And it's scary, and the plane, these aren't smooth rides, okay? These are rocking, bouncing around. You may lose altitude suddenly and drop. It's like a roller coaster ride, maybe.
So it only makes sense to hang out the back of it, right?
Yes. Well, hey, if you ever get the opportunity, take every opportunity life has to give you. What's really cool about that is you see how those mountains back there are black? They're black mountains, and I don't think I put it in here, but the sea is teal. So it's a really beautiful contrast of a teal sea and black mountains as you're flying out.
Very nice.
So then we actually landed in the desert, destination unknown, mission top secret, destination unknown. So we land there, but we actually had to do, we had to exit as if enemies were around because we didn't know what was out there. So we actually filed out.
So legitimately, you didn't know who was there?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
All
right.
We did not know if any enemies. There was a couple of terrorist groups out there, so we didn't know who was there. So we actually exited. So you when you exit like a Humvee or an aircraft, when there's enemy, you kind of file out and you make a 360 around that aircraft, and you just hit the deck in a prone position in case you have to return fire or anything like that. So it's just a quick evolution where you file out and make it 360 around the aircraft and then hit the deck on your stomach. That's a prone position. I'm sure y'all know this, cadets, but and you wait until you get the all clear.
So question, did they teach you that in ACA school?
They did not teach me that in ACA school. They taught me that as I was preparing to go to Djibouti. And that was, I think that was in South Carolina at an Army fort. I can't remember. I think Fort Jackson, but I could be wrong. And they teach you those tactics.
Okay. Yeah, not your normal, what you would think an air traffic controller would be doing.
Oh, no, sir. Not at all. Okay. So then the MV-22 had to take off. And I mentioned before, they take off like a helicopter. So what we had to do was we actually had to kneel down and huddle together because of a lot of prop wash and sandblast that the aircraft kicked up. It was like getting sandblasted. So rocks are flying at us. And as it took off and left us there, we're just covered in sand. And we're just absolutely covered and got sand. What do you call it when it rubs you raw on our faces? That was us afterwards. And so then we had to get busy building this runway. And so what we did was we had tarps, pink and orange tarps, hot pink and neon orange tarps. And we had, I believe it was, I can't actually remember if it was the pink that was the landing surface of the runway or if the orange was, but one of them was the approach end, so the non-landing surface. And then the other color represented the safe area to land. And then then we put the opposing color at the end to let them know that's the end of the runway. And so we had these huge nails. They were really heavy, about a foot long, and you had to drive the nails into the ground with these tarps to hold it down. So we went back for about 2,000 feet. So we ran on 500 yards on either side. We actually had to practice for this evolution to make sure we could run with our vest and everything. But runway is about 500 feet wide, 2,000 feet long or so. And so that, it took a good amount of the day, just running this entire gauntlet. And then we had our C-130 start pulling in to pick us up. And so originally, when you see that radio that's there,
Yes.
that's how we're communicating with that aircraft. And it starts circling over top of us. And I always ask this question because, we don't know who's out there with us, right, or watching us do all of this. So I always ask if anyone knows why they circled around us while we're building this runway. So I don't know if I should give the cadets some time to answer that.
Okay. Well, cadets, why don't you heard the question, right? So why are aircraft circling around the runway while it's being built? Put that in the chat window if you think you have a good answer for that.
Yeah. So it takes us quite some time to build this runway, and then we had to make sure that it was aligned. So we're looking at each other from line of sight. So we stand at the end of the runway, one person does, and the other one at the beginning. And we're making sure that we've lined it up so it's not like a zigzag runway. We want to make sure it's as straight and narrow as possible for the aircraft. And so the whole time we have one person that was designated to speak with the aircraft and figure out how far out they were, and just kind of guide them in to that runway. So it was a clear day, and they could see us. So what we call that is VFR, visual flight rules. They're not using any instrumentation. If we had to use any kind of like radar systems, or they had to use their radar systems, we would call that an IFR approach, which would be a instrument flight rules.
Right.
So I'll just go ahead and say it because I don't, for the sake of time, but they start circling around to make sure that no enemies had encroached in on us.
We've had so far 5 answers, and they're all kind of saying the same thing.
Yeah.
Right.
You guys are really smart. Yeah, exactly. We want to make sure that no enemies had come in on us as we're building this runway. And so they start doing what's called a combat landing approach. So if you think about a runway in your head and you think about a straight road, if I am an aircraft and I am flying in straight to that straight road, how big of a target am I? Huge, right? You could see, you know what flight path I'm on because I'm flying in straight. So what they do is they fly around in kind of a circular vortex, like a tornado, and they come down to the landing area as they fly down that I would call it like a tornado funneling down to the ground. And that just keeps them circling the area, and it doesn't give that flight or that straight path, And so they come in and they actually do a couple of touch and goes because we had to make sure that the desert could hold the weight of the aircraft.
That's a real good point. Yeah, because it's sand. You never know how deep it is, right? If you can handle it.
So we were making sure and then every time they do a touch and go, we'd have to run back and fix the tarps if they blew up or whatever it was. Make sure that there was no nails that we couldn't account for because that's called FOD. Mm-hmm. And we don't want the aircraft to pick that up into their propellers or anything like that. So we had to make sure and account for every piece of equipment that we had out there at the time so that if we couldn't find a nail, we could signal to the aircraft, hey, keep passing overhead. There's FOD, foul. What we call it is a foul deck. Foul deck meaning there's something wrong with the landing surface.
So what are you doing at the radio at this point in time? You are, maybe you get a nice picture taken, but the job is communicating like a regular ground-based air traffic controller.
Yeah, so it's just a radio with a pack. The pack's not pictured here, to get the signal up that high. But it's just basically a mobile radio that we can communicate. So we communicate on frequencies. We have UHF frequency, ultra high, and VHF, whichever, I forgot what that stands for.
Very high frequency.
Very high, yeah. Those are the frequencies that we dial into. So we're dialed into the frequency on this radio here, and the aircraft is dialed into the same, so that we can communicate on that.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Very nice.
And so anyway, they finally land, and now we have to pick up all of the tarps. So we're picking up all the tarps and all the nails, and we had a gunnery sergeant with us, and he was like, "I want all of my nails back." So we had to make sure and count everything. Very, very meticulous. You count all of your tarps, count all of your nails, your hammer, every piece of equipment that you pulled out there. And so we had to pack all of that up, and we got into that aircraft, and if you can kind of see towards the back, there was a truck out there that was kind of watching the evolution right behind it. They pulled that truck and the aircraft also, and we all flew back home. Well, not home, to Djibouti.
Very nice. To Pizza Hut and Wi-Fi. Fantastic.
It's, sailors get angry when we don't get our Pizza Hut and our Subway. So we better make sure and have a landing strip to accommodate all of this. Next slide, MC1. And there's just another picture of, I think this was actually before, because I was a lot sweatier after all of this evolution. This is before we got started. But it was hot. I would say about 110 degrees that day, and we're fully geared up as far as our vests. We have a camel pack, a helmet, Kevlar helmet. Those goggles are key whenever you're getting sandblasted, and so that's what we call battle rattle, or battle rattled out.
Nice. Very nice.
The next
picture, get all weapons trained and everything as well, right? So this isn't.
Yes, sir.
So it took quite a lot of training for you to be part of this exercise.
Yes, sir. So to prepare to go to Djibouti, you get a lot of what we call a weapons immersion course, where you have a 9mm and then your rifle on you at all times. So you, even when you go to eat in the galley, you have to unload your weapons and clear them out, and you're just eating with them on your lap. And that immersion is just to get you used to handling the weapon. I really didn't know too much about weapons up until that point. And then it was just like, man, I knew how to take it apart. I know how to clean it. So it works. You just get used to handling that weapon, so you're not in the field scared to hold your rifle or sling it on your arm,
Excellent. Very nice.
And that's my team. That's all of the air traffic controllers that were out there with me. And that's our parking area there. So we had aircraft from the Air Force, and then on the other side of the runway was your international airport. So I know we're getting close on time, but I just have a really funny story about that. When I first arrived to Djibouti, I did not know. I mean, jet lag, you would not believe. So I'm tired, and they're taking me up and down this area and saying, this is where we park this, and this is where we park that. And so we get ready to cross the runway. We're in a truck, and we ask permission to cross the runway, and out pops this guy with a rifle, and I'm freaking out. And then behind him, there was maybe like 4 or 5 other guys with rifles. and they're in a uniform, and I'm like, oh my gosh, we're getting ambushed, and they're on my left and they're on my right, and the other guy just laughs at me, and he just drives up to the tower, and there's like men with rifles all over the tower. They're all the way up the stairwell. Now, towers are about 5 floors high typically, right? So we're going up, and I'm like, in my head, I'm just like, why is he laughing? Because I'm freaking out. There's men with rifles in the tower cab, and I'm meeting everybody and saying hello and trying not to act like I'm so brand new. And he said, oh, when the president of Djibouti takes off, all of his men line the runway, all of his security detail line the runway with rifles. So from that point on, when the new people would come in, and we'd always like sit back and kind of watch their reaction to men storming the tower with rifles. It was unnerving.
It was like your worst nightmare, right?
Yes.
Everything that you hoped would never happen, but yet it's happening right there.
It's happening right there, and they run up. They actually run up the tower when he's getting ready to depart, and so it was oh my gosh! And then from that point on, you get used to it. It doesn't become a big thing. You don't feel as scared, and then it was always fun to watch the new guys, their reaction when that happened.
That's awesome. Yeah, again, a totally different experience than growing up in a very small town in Texas.
Yes, sir. Different.
So I have a couple brief questions from the cadets. For the most part, everybody's questions have been integrated in one way, shape, or form in this conversation. So thank you, cadets, for keeping up with what's going on here. That's really great. One of the questions is there a large population of females in the air traffic control rate? Now, is it like a 50-50 mix, or is it, is it a pretty good blend of people that are part of this?
I think from the time that I started, which was 2005, there has been an increase in females. When I showed up, there was always just maybe 1 or 2 of us. And
Right.
As you see here in the picture, you can see that there's only 2 of us. There's a captain, Air Force captain, so she doesn't count for this factor. But there's really only 2 of us female there. So there's not that many, and it's not because it's a men's rate or anything like that. I just think in general, in the Navy, we're just kind of outnumbered, and so it's how the chips fall when it comes to stations. Yes, sir.
Okay, very great. Another question somebody was asking was, how do you interact, or do you interact with drones?
With drones, when I was in Corpus Christi, they were just starting to bring drones online. And remember that I got out of active duty around 2011, and I went and I became a civilian. So I was actually writing curriculum for all the training pilots in the Navy. So the drones were kind of still a new phase of bringing them in. And as we brought them in, we had all of our manned aircraft stay clear of that airspace at that time, because we didn't want to mix unmanned with manned aircraft. But it's kind of weird. They're very, very slow, and they kind of just bounce out there to the runway, and you wait, I don't know, an hour for them to get to the runway, and you're talking to a guy in a box that's on the ground, right? So everything is just like you're talking to an actual pilot, but he's on the ground, and they're just slower. They're harder to see out of the tower. They're just narrow, and so most of the time you have to develop an eye as an air traffic controller to see your planes. Anyway, they look like birds sometimes,
Right.
but drones are a lot harder because they're more sleek and aerodynamic, and so they're a little bit harder to spot visually. We have radars in the tower also to help us pinpoint where they're at, but they're just typically harder to see, and they're slower. And that's the last time that I've controlled drones. And occasionally they'd fall. This is back, when they were just coming online, they just lose comms and fall in the water or something. But they're pretty big. Yeah.
Right.
They're actually
They're
big.
better now, I think.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Let me see. Another question that was being asked was, and I believe you mentioned this before, with your qualifications as a Navy air traffic controller and with your pink card, you also, you are FAA certified. Could you, if you wished, work in an FAA tower?
Now, that's something that you probably need to know going in if you're planning on doing this as a career, or if that's in your plans to do, because the FAA has an age limit. So you actually have to be accepted into their academy by age 31. So if you wanted to do your Navy time and then pair it with FAA time, you need to monitor your age, because I actually got out at age 31 and I missed that timeline. Now, I know there's waivers if you retire in the Navy and then want to go into the FAA. They have waivers, but as far as when I got out, or when I got off of active duty, I was too old to go into the FAA, because you have to retire at age 56.
Oh, okay. I got that. But other than that age group, the training is the same, right? The job, for the most part.
Absolutely.
Just going to Djibouti, clearly. But other than that, it's the same.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. The tower training that we get, you get actually qualified all the way up, so you can be certified tower operator, and that means that you are able to control everything that goes on. And that certified tower operator's a qual that transitions over to the civilian side too.
Okay. So I'm going to end with one question that our cadets always seem to ask, and they know it's coming right now, so no problem. And this is a really good one for you. All right. And the question is, if you were to describe the Navy with just one word, okay, just one word, what would that word be and why?
Diverse.
Diverse. Why?
I would say because compared to the other branches, we have subsurface, air warfare, intelligence warfare, surface warfare, and no other branch can claim how diverse the United States Navy is. We are the world's greatest Navy, right? We're the only ones that run on nuclear power. So we're the fastest, most stealthiest, lethal Navy out there. And you get little, small town girls like me. You get guys from New York. You get gals from California. And when you bring all of those different personalities and the way they grew up, and you come together and you're doing that one job to make that, let's say, that aircraft carrier, you've got 5,000 sailors on there. You've got 5,000 different people, unique people from different areas of the world, because some of our sailors are from Africa, and we come together for that one mission, and that diversity is amazing to me.
Excellent answer. Thank you very much. And that's a great way to end up our broadcast today. So, Petty Officer Britt, thank you very much for sharing your story with us. I mean, every time we have these episodes, cadets, I'm always learning something new. And honestly, I learned a lot about air traffic control because I'm used to working with it. But your experience, Petty Officer Britt, in Djibouti and setting all that up, that is not what I would initially think about. And I brought it up, going to A school to be an air traffic controller. Next thing you know, you're doing all that. So to that word choice you decided on, diverse, can't really get much more diverse than that. So well done. Really appreciate that.
Thank you.
So cadets and our friends from Canada, we will be posting the online quiz in a few moments here. So take the quiz, right? If some of the topics weren't exactly covered in this presentation, use the internet. You know how to do it. Look it up. It's not a big deal. I know, I wrote the quiz. It's easy. Take the quiz, get the credit, get the pride of reinforcing what we talked about today. So, fantastic presentation. Thank you, everybody, for joining. If you liked the broadcast, smash that thumbs up button. We always appreciate it. Always appreciate some good words. Once we're done with the live broadcast, and it's the taped version. If you have additional comments, put them in the comment section. Things you would like to see, stuff you would like us to talk about, because this presentation and this whole series is for you. So give us some ideas of things you'd like to hear, and we'll do our best to get them on board. And we'll do our best to have speakers as qualified and as outstanding as Petty Officer Britt. So thank you very much for participating once again. So cadets, join us next time for another episode of Real Sailors, Real Sea Stories. Take care, everybody. Have a great evening.